Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we sift through some of the most compelling ideas out there, helping you make sense of, well, our pretty complex world. Today we're exploring a really profound feeling, one that often goes unspoken but echoes through so many experiences, that gut feeling of, it's not safe here.
Right.
And for this deep dive, we're leaning heavily on the powerful work of Dr. Shungu M'gadzah. She's an educational psychologist and equity consultant, and her insights really show how our differences, the visible ones and the invisible ones, fundamentally shape how we experience belonging or exclusion, and ultimately, our sense of safety and connection.
That's absolutely right. And our mission today really is to unpack Dr. Mugadzah's framework. We're going to explore how we, maybe individually, maybe collectively, often retreat into what she calls these caves. Caves of fear, caves of privilege, maybe even caves of delusion. When we don't feel truly seen or understood or, well, safe, we'll look at what actually stops us from building those bridges of empathy, and maybe how even really small human acts can start to change everything. It's about finding pathways to deeper, more authentic connection for everyone.
It's not safe here. Just hearing that phrase, you can feel its impact, can't you? It's so raw, so immediate. It's a feeling that probably resonates with so many of us in all sorts of contexts. I wonder, just take a second, think about where in your own life you might have felt it. Maybe it was fleeting, maybe a whisper, or maybe it was, really loud shout in a specific situation.
And Dr. Mugadzah makes such a crucial point here. This feeling, it goes way beyond just the threat of physical harm. For her, true safety is actually about the presence of empathy, dignity, and belonging. Think about that. Empathy, dignity, belonging. When those key things are missing, that's when that it's not safe here feeling can pop up. And it can happen in, well, an incredibly wide range of scenarios. The source she provides details everything from, school kids facing racialized bullying, employees stuck in toxic workplaces, people caught in war zones, or honestly, just anyone excluded daily for being different. And it's really vital to grasp, as Dr. M'gadzah stresses, this isn't just about race or color. It's about any difference, neurodivergence, maybe a disability, maybe just being the new person, anything that makes someone feel unwelcome or unseen.
That distinction is so powerful. Safety isn't just the absence of harm, it's the active presence of empathy and dignity.
Okay.
So if that's the core problem, how does Dr. Mugadza help us understand why this happens? You mentioned her metaphor of cave. Let's unpack that. What are these exactly?
Yeah, she uses this idea of caves to illustrate the spaces, the mental or sometimes even physical spaces people retreat into, or sometimes get stuck in. Often it's a protective thing, right? Against environments where they feel unsafe or unheard. And she identifies three main types, and each one contributes to this bigger problem of disconnection. So the first type she talks about are caves of fear. These are spaces where people withdraw because of trauma, maybe intense anxiety, or just repeated experiences of being excluded. It's a deep protective mechanism. Dr. Mugadza specifically brings up examples like autistic children or kids experiencing anxiety-based school refusal. For them, a place like school, which is supposed to be inclusive, can become just overwhelming. Too much sensory input, maybe social confusion, or just a lack of understanding from others. So retreating isn't really a choice, it's more like an urgent response. It's about self-preservation. In these caves, avoidance literally becomes survival.
Okay, so it's not about preferring to be alone necessarily. It's a withdrawal because the environment, the system, isn't meeting their needs. That makes a lot of sense. What's the next type of cave?
Right. Next up, we have the caves of privilege. Now, these are spaces where people mostly interact with others who are, well, pretty much like them. Similar backgrounds, similar experiences, they look alike, think alike. It creates this kind of social echo chamber, or a bubble. And it insulates them from different perspectives, from the realities that other people face. This lack of exposure, it can inadvertently stop them from really understanding life outside their own sphere. Privilege here becomes this comfortable bubble. It shields people from others' realities and often gets in the way of developing real empathy.
Yeah, I can see that. A bubble that could be really hard to pop, especially if you don't even know you're in one. Okay, and then the third type, which you said gets really interesting.
Yes, the caves of delusion. This is where it gets complex. Here, people actively deny that inequality is real, or they dismiss the lived experiences of others, or they kind of convince themselves a problem doesn't exist just because they aren't affected by it. Dr. Mugadza points out that delusion can actually work as a psychological defense mechanism, right? A way to protect your own comfort or your worldview. But, and this is the crucial part, if it goes unchallenged, it actively reinforces systemic injustice. It deepens the divides between different groups. She specifically talks about how some people operate under dangerous delusions. They might ignore things happening right in front of them, believe false stories, all just to protect their own comfort or maybe their power. So this kind of delusion becomes like a blinder. It stops people seeing the reality and actively contributes to harm continuing.
Wow. So whether it's pulling back out of fear, or living comfortably in that bubble of privilege, or actively denying reality, all three of these caves end up leading to this profound disconnections. They're like walls. And as Dr. Mugadza emphasizes, disrupting these caves, challenging these patterns in ourselves and others is absolutely critical if we want to build those bridges of empathy.
Exactly. It really is about spotting these patterns, first in ourselves, then in society, if we actually hope to foster genuine connection.
These caves are such useful ways to think about disconnection. But, sometimes it's a personal story that really makes these ideas hit home. Dr. Mugadza, you shared a really quite poignant experience yourself, didn't you? From the launch of the Church of England's difference training materials.
I did, yes. I talk about being at this really vibrant event, lots of people, everyone mingling, chatting away. But because I had some mobility challenges at the time, I couldn't really move around easily. So I was seated while pretty much everyone else was standing in groups. My difference right then, it wasn't about my race or my gender. There were plenty of Black professionals there, lots of women. My difference was just physical. I couldn't navigate the space the way others could, and I described feeling visibly present yet excluded from the casual, organic connections that were just happening all around me. People would come into my space, say a quick hello, but very few actually lingered. It's a striking thought, isn't it? Many people might enter your space, but very few truly linger there with you. And that experience, it really connected deeply with my work as an educational psychologist, especially thinking about young people. I think about the kids I support, particularly autistic children or those dealing with that anxiety-based school refusal I mentioned earlier. For them, school often becomes so overwhelming they just can't face it anymore. They also retreat into these kinds of caves, but it's often not by choice. It's a protective response to systems that just don't understand or accommodate their needs. And this really highlights how intersectionality, the overlap of race, disability, gender, neurodivergence, how that can really compound exclusion in these spaces. Whether our differences are visible or invisible, they profoundly shape how we're received, how we're included, or sometimes tragically, how we're overlooked. It's a stark reminder that if people aren't supported, some just stop trying to enter those spaces at all.
That image, feeling visibly present, but still excluded, even when the room is full. That's incredibly striking. It really makes you stop and think about how often we might unintentionally make others feel that way. But in your story, something changed, right? There was a shift. What was that turning point, that moment of connection?
It was actually a beautiful, very simple event. There was a woman running one of the stalls at the event, and she noticed me sitting there alone. She just came over and we started talking, and then I invited her to sit down beside me. And that act, which seems so simple, it crossed a really significant divide, the divide between standing and sitting, between comfort and discomfort, between maybe making an assumption and showing genuine curiosity. By choosing to join me in my space, to linger and actually share it, she built a bridge. And that interaction for me, it just underlines this belief I have that healing often starts with one simple act, real, genuine connection.
And what happened next was quite personal, wasn't it? She asked about your name. Shungu.
Yes, she did. I explained, Shungu means determination and ambition with a bit of frustration. And I added, laughing a bit, and my middle name is Hilda. That means battle maiden. And the woman, she was clearly quite taken with this. She grinned and said, "So you are a determined, ambitious, passionate battle maiden." Then she asked this incredibly insightful question. If you had a shield in one hand ready to do battle, what would be in the other hand?
That's a brilliant question. Really gets you to thinking about what you carry forward with that determination. What did you say?
Yeah.
What was in the other hand?
My answer, it was immediate, really. I said, in my other hand would be the Church of England difference materials and the 6 stages framework. Because, as I explained to her, these are tools for change, weapons for inclusion, instruments to help people navigate differences, foster empathy, and build peace. And that moment, it just perfectly captured the idea that, we don't always need huge gestures or massive policy overhauls. Sometimes what we really, truly need is just someone willing to sit beside us, someone willing to linger a bit longer, to ask the right question, to actually listen, to try and understand, and just to share our space. It's in those small human acts that empathy starts to grow and those bridges get built.
That's incredibly powerful. Healing starts with connection, with someone just choosing to share your space. Let's zoom out again, because this isn't just happening in events, right? Across society, schools, workplaces, social events, public spaces, so many people are quietly retreating from environments that just don't feel welcoming. It reminds me of that really poignant line from Roy Cropper, the neurodivergent character from Coronation Street. He reflected on leaving school early, saying, "I found social interaction something of a trial, so I chose to spare myself that particular trauma, something I've always profoundly regretted."
Exactly. And that's the tragic, often silent cost of disconnection. So many children, so many adults, they internalize their difference. They carry this heavy weight of isolation silently, and they desperately need empathy. They need allies. They need advocates who are willing to sit in their space, metaphorically or literally, and genuinely listen. I also bring up that horrific real-world incident in Athlone, Ireland. An Indian man was brutally attacked, left injured in the street, and the woman who helped him, Jennifer Murray, she shared a video, and her words just echoed with that same powerful, chilling phrase, "It's not safe here." And these experiences, as I really try to stress, they aren't exclusive to any one group. They can happen to anyone whose difference makes them a target or makes them feel like an outsider. Safety, she reminds us again and again, it's more than just not being harmed. It's the active presence of empathy, dignity, and belonging.
It's so clear the stakes are incredibly high when we fail to create these safe, empathetic spaces. So, okay, how do we move forward? Dr. Mugadza offers this tangible tool, doesn't she? Her 6 stages framework. This sounds like the potential roadmap out of those caves we talked about. Can you give us a sense of what that framework involves? Maybe touch on a couple of the stages.
Absolutely. Yeah, the 6 stages framework, it's really designed to support individuals and teams, even whole systems, to move from those silos of separation towards shared spaces where people feel they belong. It kicks off with recognition and awareness, that's stage 1. And it's all about helping people become truly conscious of their own biases, the subtle ways exclusion might be playing out, and how maybe their own comfort zones are inadvertently making someone else feel uncomfortable. It asks us to really look closely at our assumptions.
Okay, so step 1 is really seeing the problem clearly, both within ourselves and in the world around us.
Precisely. And from there, we move into stages like reflection and empathy building. This stage is about deep introspection. It encourages us to actively try and step into someone else's shoes, into their lived experience, not just to understand what they're going through intellectually, but to try and feel how it feels. It's about moving towards emotional connection. This might involve, listening to people's stories, having difficult conversations, actively seeking out perspectives that are different from your own. And then a later stage is disruption and action. This is absolutely key. This is where that awareness and empathy have to translate into real, tangible change. It's about challenging practices that exclude people, speaking up when you see injustice, and actively working to dismantle barriers, big or small. It's simply not enough to just understand the problem. The framework pushes us to act to change it. And that action could be anything from advocating for a more inclusive policy at work, maybe, or just adjusting how you interact in a social setting to make sure someone isn't being left out.
That's incredibly helpful, yeah. Understanding that progression from internal recognition all the way to outward action. It sounds like a really practical path towards building those bridges you've been talking about.
Exactly. The framework provides a kind of structured approach, a way to intentionally foster empathy and build those vital connections. The whole point is to create environments where that phrase, "it's not safe here," becomes, well, much rarer, and hopefully replaced by a genuine sense of belonging for more people.
This deep dive has really brought us full circle, hasn't it? From that raw feeling of it's not safe here, exploring the caves we retreat into, and landing on this powerful idea that building bridges of empathy is fundamentally about healing through connection, often through those really small, brave human acts.
It really is. And as you listening, go about your day, maybe take a moment to reflect on some of those powerful questions that come directly from the source material. Ask yourself, what spaces are you avoiding and why? What spaces feel safe to you? Which feel unsafe or maybe just unfamiliar? Where might you be stuck? In a cave of fear, perhaps? Or a cave of privilege? Maybe even, honestly, a cave of delusion? Who do you see sitting alone, literally or metaphorically? What might it take for you to step into someone else's space with real empathy? And that question the woman asked me, if you had a tool for change in one hand, what would it be? What would be in your other hand?
And maybe my final thought for you today, really inspired by this whole conversation, is this. Be brave. Step into new spaces. Be willing to invite others into yours. Because that is where empathy truly begins. Go out there and think about how you might start building those bridges in your own life, in your own way. Thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive.